What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Backstage Journal podcast. This is season 3, episode 3. My name is Rhett, Shull. Thank you guys so much for joining me both in video form and audio form this season. This week's episode I'm really excited about because this week's guest is somebody that I've been following. He was probably the first guitar player I ever followed on social media 10 years ago. It had to have been. Yeah, 2011 I think is when, or 2012. Can't remember, but it's Jared Scharff. If you don't know who Jared Scharff is, he was the guitar player in the SNL, Saturday Night Live house band from 2006 to 2020. I basically grew up watching him on SNL. I've been a big fan of Saturday Night Live pretty much my whole life, and it's a bucket list dream for me to play on SNL one day as part of a band or group. I really want to be able to walk into 30 Rock with a guitar in my hand and go play SNL. It's a huge thing for me that I want to do one day. Anyways, yeah, I've followed Jared on social media for years. I remember when he was doing the unnecessary shredding bit on Instagram and Facebook years ago, and he is just a really cool guy with a cool story. And we talk about a lot of stuff today. This is a long episode. This might be it might set the record for longest Backstage Journal episode yet. So I'm going to keep the intro relatively short, and we're going to get straight into the interview with Jared. But before we do, we're going to take this week's voicemail. If you're new to the show, you can leave a voicemail to be played on the podcast if you call the Google Voice number 470-222-5851. Leave a question, a comment, or a concern, and I will get to it on the show. So, without further ado, here is this week's voicemail.
Hi, Rhett. My name is Davis Wilton Bader, and I'm a guitarist based out of St. Louis, Missouri. With all the gigs and opportunities you've had in Nashville, have you ever considered moving there? If you've thought about it but decided against it, what keeps you in Atlanta, and what would have to happen for you to make the move to a big music town like Nashville? Anyway, thanks for taking my call. Hope to see you perform live sometime soon. Bye.
Davis, thanks for the voicemail, man. It's a little confusing. Google transcribes all these voicemails, and Google said your name was David, but I heard Davis on the voicemail. So if it is David and I'm hearing it wrong, I apologize. Really good question, and it's been a really big question that Tilly and I have been considering for the last 5 years or so. So in 2015, 2016, I took a gig that was based out of Nashville, playing guitar for a band called Muddy Magnolias, and it was an amazing gig, one of the most fun gigs I've had. And for 3.5 years, I think it was, I was in that band. It was pretty much my full-time gig. We were traveling and touring every month, just about. I was traveling back and forth to Nashville on a weekly basis. In those 3 years, I probably traveled back and forth to Nashville, I mean, well over 100 times, maybe even 200. I mean, it's crazy. I basically have the drive from Atlanta to Nashville memorized, like every inch of highway. Anyways, and there was a time during that gig that Tilly and I were heavily considering moving to Nashville. We didn't at the time because she was in school, and we didn't want to have to transfer schools because we would end up paying out-of-state tuition. It's very boring. It basically kept us in Atlanta. When that gig ended is when I started making YouTube videos, and in 2018. And through my 3 years now on YouTube, my sort of career aspirations haven't completely shifted, but they have changed a little bit. And that has led us to make the decision to stay in Atlanta for the time being. I don't think we're going to live in Atlanta forever. There are other places in the world, quite honestly, that I want to live and spend time in. But part of the reason we decided to not go to Nashville was because that part of my career that would have benefited from being in Nashville, which was chasing the hired gun, like trying to land a big first-class touring gig, I'm not really interested in anymore. I've done the hired gun thing, and it's been great. And I know a lot of people that do it, and that's their gig, and they really enjoy it. But when I started finding success on YouTube, it sort of shifted my priorities. And it kind of showed me that, I think long-term, for me, a better play is to invest my time and energy into something that I own and that I have equity in and that literally has my name on it, rather than using my time spent away from home and my time at home practicing, going to rehearsals and working to help build someone else's career, I want to do that for myself. And right now I'm doing that through YouTube and through podcasting and all that kind of stuff. And 10 years from now, that may very well look completely different than it does now. But the success that I've found here shifted my priorities from wanting to be a hired gun playing arenas every night to wanting to continue to build this thing. Now, live music and playing music live is still very much at the forefront of my career and what I want to do. The only reason I'm not doing it right now is because nobody's doing it right now because of the pandemic. If things were the way they were in 2019, yeah, I'd still be doing YouTube and all this stuff in conjunction with going on the road with Noah or whoever I got the opportunity to play with, Jesse, Noah, all them. But now, moving forward, I'm more interested in trying to develop my own band. And, you know, I'm pretty sure by the time this episode comes out, we will have already announced the name of the band, Deacon Knight. And so now I'm sort of shifting my focus to that. So, you know, a band that I helped form and that is what I want to do musically. And much like my YouTube career kind of has my name on it along with the other members of that band. So all that to say, I don't need to be in Nashville to do YouTube. I don't need to be in Nashville to play in Deacon Knight. And from a city perspective, I like Atlanta better than Nashville. I just do, man. It's a bigger city. I think our food is better here. Sorry, Nashville. I mean, look, Sean Brock is in Nashville. I'm a huge fan of Sean. Hope to have him on the show. Sean Brock aside, I think the food scene in Atlanta is as good as New York or LA or anywhere else, and that's important to me and Tilly. We like food. Sorry. And the other thing is, practically, when we can get back to traveling, the airport in Atlanta is the biggest and busiest in the world, which means that in, you know, a 30-minute drive, I can get on a plane and fly direct almost anywhere in the world, which is an important thing. When you want to do the type of traveling that I want to do, being close to an airport like Atlanta is a big thing. So combined with the film industry blowing up here in Atlanta, combined with, you know, my family is here. I have a ton of friends here. We just decided to set roots down here for the time being, and we'll see where things go. Never say never. We may very, very well end up in Nashville, but that was our reasoning. So thanks again for the voicemail, Davis. Really appreciate it. If you guys want to leave a voicemail for next week's episode, call 470-222-5851. So, like I said, let's jump in with Jared Scharff. He and I really got in depth on some fun stuff. We talk about SNL, we talk about his career as a producer, and we talk about gear and why he hates overdrive pedals, and it's a whole thing. This will not be the only episode with Jared. We barely scratched the surface together. He's such a fun guy, such a great guy. So without further ado, let's jump in. This is my interview with Jared Scharff. Because the thing is, when live shows and stuff come back, I'm obviously not going to take that Vox out on the road. But
that's too bad.
Yeah. Dude, I'll send you some closer pictures of it after we're done. It is like museum grade. I mean, it was one guy in Tallahassee owned it since new, and it sat in the closet for the last 25 years. It's mint. If something, I kind of feel like if something happens to that amp, I am responsible. So I'm trying to keep it in good shape. Yeah,
it's like you almost have to like preserve that.
Yeah.
So here's like a fun little amp tip. Well, I have a very strange relationship with amplifiers.
Okay.
Just in general. When I was in high school, my dad, this is like a long time ago. I'm probably much older than you. So when I was in high school, my dad got me, like, it just came out, like the Fender Stage 112.
Okay. Yeah.
You probably don't even know what that is.
I know of it. I've never played one.
Right, so this is like what everyone got. This was like the big new Fender amp like at the time. This was like the hot shit Fender. Like solid state, loud and clean. And it had like a channel for distortion, which of course, like, it sounded terrible, the distortion. But the clean channel was awesome. And like when I was so I used this like with pedals, and then even in college, like that was the that was the amp that I used. Like I was in a band that was like signed to RCA Records, and like I used like that amp touring with like my pedal board, and like at the time it was like there was Full Tone was like the first kind of like boutique pedal maker. Like there was no boutiques yet.
Right.
So I had like the Full Drive 2, like the OG, like the first edition, Super Trem. Like I had a Digitech Whammy, like, you know, before everyone was like the 1 and the 2 are the ones with the chips, you know, and like I had a Memory Man, like a real, like a Memory Man, because when we got signed, we had an album budget and we were all allowed a certain amount of money to buy gear. So we all had like a pedal allotment. So I got the most pedals because I was like the guitar guy.
Yeah.
So I got a Small Stone, a Small Clone, and a Memory Man, like late 90s, early 2000s.
Right.
The chicken head knobs on the Memory Man, which, well, not chicken head, but like they have the circle with the point.
Right. Tell me you still have those pedals, right?
Yeah. Are you kidding?
Okay,
that Memory Man is still my favorite delay of all time. Like that
course.
specific one.
Dude, I'm kind of getting into the market for a Memory Man. I'm sort of slipping into the world of
$500.
Well, the thing is, I'm getting into the world of analog delays now. A subscriber sent me this week, the Maxon, the 8999. It's fantastic. I have a Jam Pedals like Delay Llama Extreme, which is that was actually I think my first real analog delay. Everything I've come up with, you know, was Strymon and all the digital emulation, which is great. But getting my hands on the analog stuff now is awesome. And I'm kind of jonesing for like, I'm a huge U2 fan. I've got the AC30 now, so it's kind of like
you got to do it.
I have to do the thing,
dude. Honestly, so actually years later, so that was like the whole thing. We'll get back to the amp thing in a second, but so that Memory Man, it's like it's got a really like grit to it, and later on, I've played other Memory Mans of like that era that have just the circle knobs, and I never liked them as much, and I never really thought about it, and then like years later, like maybe 5 years ago or so, I bought another Memory Man. It's somewhere it's in boxes when I shipped all my stuff from New York out to LA. It's like sitting in a box, probably like in the garage. So I bought an Analog Man modded. He had a Memory Man from the same era, but it was this. It's not the. I don't think it's the same knobs. It might be the same knobs, but so his mod has slower delay time, which obviously like that would have. I wanted that. I wanted a slower, because the Memory Man's quite fast.
Yeah.
And it had a longer feedback, and it was cleaner.
Right.
And so these were all things that I was like, yes, like no brainer. And I got it, and it does do all of those things.
Right.
So I got the Analog Man, and like it sounds perfect. Like what he says he does, like he did it. It's amazing. It's great. It's clear. It's clean. It's got all those things. But then I'm just like, yeah, I like the non-mono. I like the gritty, grungy original better.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like, you know, if you want the clean, sort of pristine delay sounds, there's so many different ways to do that now. So I bought a tape echo this year. I bought a Multivox Multi Echo, and I had to have it serviced. There's a guy up in Brooklyn that I found. Kevin Kadish told me about. I learned that you guys are. We have a mutual friend in Kevin Kadish.
I'm sure we have many, actually.
Yeah, but yeah, Kevin told me about him because Kevin's tape echo collection is like unrivaled, I think, in terms of people that I know at least. So I sent it up to this guy in Brooklyn, and he completely went through it, and he was like, yeah, man, I got it pretty close. There is a little like warble somewhere in this one motor. If you want, like, I can keep digging in and try and find it. I was like, no, man, that's like, I like the imperfection. I like that sort of fact that it's screwed up and not quite right. I want that. So yeah, I love it, man. We have to talk about,
Wait. Let me finish.
Yeah. Okay.
But no, I'm totally with you. But I think I'm gonna sell that Memory Man. I paid like $500 for it.
The
like,
Analog Man one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because like I have the one from like it has so much sentimental value. I have it. It's like I don't really need another one.
Should we link your Reverb store in the description of the video here for people who are watching?
you know, I might be doing a reverb store potentially with things used on a potential show I might have been a part of.
We're going to get into that.
For many years.
Yep.
So yeah, I might be doing a lot of house cleaning.
Yeah, we're definitely going to get into that. I have lots of questions.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. But yeah, so anyway, so that was a little tangent back to the amp thing. So like when I was out of that band, oh, by the way, and like we went like amp shopping, like when we got a record deal, I went with my manager at the time. And like, I wanted to get a Plexi. I was like, oh, I'm going to get a Plexi to be perfect. And then I realized like, oh, I need 2 channels. Like I can't just do the volume. I was like, this is like a pop band. I was like, this is not going to work.
Right.
So, I just used the Fender Stage 112 the whole time. And honestly, like I've listened back to like some gigs from like my early 20s with that amp and like those sounds and like my Strat. And sometimes I'm like, that was like some of the best tone I've ever had.
Right. Right. Well, it's probably because you knew that amp, you knew that rig, and you knew how to make it do what you wanted it to do. Right.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. Like years and years of these tone quests and everything. It's like, I realize how ironic it is that it's like, you can't just buy one distortion. First of all, I'm anti distortion pedal, just so you know, like right off the bat, like I do not believe in it.
Wait a second. Hold on. Before you go, don't move past that. Specifically distortion pedal or overdrive, boost, all this stuff.
Not boost. Anything like that's supposed to sound like an amp that's not clean.
Got it.
No. I'm super anti. And then, but like if you go far enough past, and then when you hit fuzz, I'm like, that is like I am like a servant to fuzz.
But you and me both, man.
Fuzz is my god.
It is. Yes. Oh shit. I need that as a t-shirt. Let's design a t-shirt together that says Fuzz is my god, and we'll put them out there. Can we do that? For
That's
sure.
a great idea.
Yeah, I've got a merch guy. We can totally do that.
Do you know that I made a fuzz pedal with Walrus Audio?
I did not. Wait, yes, I did know that. Yeah.
The Congra.
Dude. Oh my gosh.
Based off of the 60s filter fuzz that my brother-in-law had that I fell in love with. But anyway, we can get into that later.
Yeah. The more I talk to you, the more I'm figuring out you and I are kindred spirits, Jared.
Oh, dude. I mean, I was like, oh yeah, this is like this. Yeah, everything that I like, same shit, everything. But anyway, and I have some Dennis Fano stories as well.
Yes,
for you.
I know you do. Dude, I've been watching you. I want to say, for about 10 years. We'll get into the SNL thing in a little bit, but I remember you were one of the first like guitar players that I started following on social media back in, I think, 2010, 2011, 2012. I was in music school at the time here in Atlanta and found you, I guess it might have been on Instagram and like some early YouTube videos that you did. I watched like an early Premier Guitar Rig rundown that you did.
Oh, dude, that was so embarrassing. The totally messed up non-pedal board pedal board.
I remember all the unnecessary shredding bits that you used to do. I love that stuff, man. Yeah, so I've been following you for a long time. It's an honor to have you on my podcast and to connect a couple weeks ago like we did. Like it's really, really cool to get to talk to you and know you and everything. Yeah, like I said, I have a ton of questions.
Dude,
so.
I was saying this when you were off the headphones, and I was like, I hope you realize this is going to be like a 4-hour conversation. Like
totally
we have
fine.
so much to talk about.
That is totally fine.
I'm just like, I hope you cleared your day because like, yeah, I watch like all your YouTube videos. I love them. They're amazing. They're so informative, but they're like nerdy, but like not like insanely nerdy. They're like, it's perfect. It's like the perfect amount of like stuff like you don't really need to know, but stuff you kind of also need to know, but stuff you don't really want to know, but I'm glad I know this. And like, but it's also, but then there's like the musical part of it, which is like the simple part of like the playing part, the history of things. Like it's really informative and awesome. And I think like you do a great job and I love them. And like, I mean, whenever I always tell people about it, dude, I posted that thing about the, Pink Floyd.
We have to talk about that. So first of all, thank you for saying
people have
that.
lost their mind.
Yeah. So for those of you that might not be in the loop, a few weeks ago I made a video about like P90s, and in that video I talked about the famous David Gilmour solo that everyone thinks, and I thought was a long time, was a Strat neck pickup.
I thought that was the epitome of neck Strat tone.
It's not. It's a gold top with P90s.
I know. My whole life has been a lie.
Yeah, the Another Brick in the Wall solo. And I played it on the video, and then, I guess a couple days ago on Instagram, Jared hit me up, and he's like, what the hell is going on? This is crazy. And you've been posting about it for like 2 days now.
Dude,
so
no,
good.
I'm like, you like flipped my world just with that one piece of information. And literally, I've never had more comments, I think, in my life on Instagram about people being like, what? Like, minds have been blown. I did a TikTok with it.
Yep.
Like just comment. Like, people are going crazy. Like, a few people knew, but like I'd say 95% of the people did not know.
Yeah.
And everyone is just like, feels the same way I do. They're like, my life is a lie. Like, this is like, when I think of David Gilmour and like Strat tone, I think of that solo.
Yeah. Totally, 100%.
And the odd thing is, I've always loved Gibson Les Pauls with P90s. And I played one on the show for like a while. I actually sent the guitar back because it just like wasn't like the one, but
right.
But it sounded great. And man, now I'm just like, oh my gosh. And it's so funny because I have this Fano by Dennis, like made by Dennis, like a JM6 that I think like I kind of became known for on the show for a while. It's like the Pelham Blue Burst one.
Yep.
That everyone always thinks is like a Jaguar or something, but it's not. Which was my second one that he made for me. The first one was the now famous Ice Metallic Blue Gold. It was the first one ever made of that color scheme.
Right.
It was made just for me. And like we talked about it, and I loved it so much. The color and everything, it played well, but it was amazing. It was like, it was perfect, but it just didn't have that magic.
Right.
And so I sent it back. We started again, and then he made the Pelham Blue Burst one, and that was like the magic one.
Right.
And but that was only after I got James Valentine from Maroon 5. He got his first Fano from Dennis. It was the Silvertone, like the Harmony Red Burst.
Yep.
So they were good. They were playing on SNL. I'm good friends with James and the band, and like, well, mostly James. I knew Adam growing up. We played in bands and stuff. So Dennis sent me the guitar. I played it on a show, and then the next week I gave it to James when they played at SNL. And I was like, I love this guitar. I'm like, damn, I can't believe I have to give it to James. But anyway, so that the P90s, like the one that I have, like the Pelham Blue Burst, like the one. I always felt like in the bridge position, it just sounds like the best, like Les Paul Jr., like kind of Gibson Les Paul that's not too beefy, like perfect, like mid-range punchy sound. Then the middle pickup always sounded like kind of like a Strat.
Yeah. Right.
It just sounds like it's clear and bell-like, and I would use that for like the funkier stuff on SNL. And then the neck pickup was always just kind of its own thing. Like, to me, that was maybe like the more jazz master moment. I don't know. But that guitar was so versatile, and it just, oh man, that guitar screams. It's like one of my favorites.
Yeah.
But anyway, sorry.
I was going to say, I think for me on the Gilmour thing, it wasn't, I always heard that growing up about it's a gold top, and there was something in the back of my mind that just thought, no, there's no way, like that's obviously a Strat. There's obviously a Strat. And then I was researching for the video, and I just decided I had to borrow a gold top from Rick Beato because I don't have one, and his is just like a normal Gibson. It's a custom shop from like 2012 or something. And I was in here, I was playing through the Axe effects, and I dialed up a sound that I thought was right, and I started playing the solo, and it was like, oh, no, that's exactly the sound. That is exactly the sound that was recorded. Like, no question about it. That's not a Strat. That's a gold top.
No, and the funny thing is, I actually went back and listened to it after you blew my mind on that video. And then I listened to it, and I was like, oh yeah, that doesn't sound like a Strat.
Yeah, you're right.
But like, it was this weird, like, knowing he was a Strat guy, it was still that neck thing. His hands have that blues player neck pickup tone.
Yeah.
Like the way he digs into a Strat, it's like there's a certain style of guitar playing that like someone, like you said, and I think you also said this in your video about different positions of the Strat.
Yeah.
Like there's different people who are famous for like different positions.
Right.
I think that was you. It was like in another different video, like another. It might have been. I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought it was you.
Might be the E flat Strat video. I have to go back. I don't remember what I put in videos after I put them up. I have to.
Well, I pretty much like only watch your guitar videos, so probably was you. And I think you were talking about how like different positions on the Strat kind of like have people you associate being famous for, and like it was John Mayer.
Oh,
I watched a John Mayer Paul Reed Smith conversation recently.
I will take being confused with John Mayer any day. That is a fine compliment.
I feel like it's a very you comment, but anyway, like there's a sound that like people who gravitate toward a neck pickup on a Strat like play kind of a certain way.
Right.
It's a certain thing.
Right.
And you take that player to any guitar, like it still kind of has that sound, and the Les Paul with P90s, that's a close because it's got that clarity and that spank of a Strat.
Right.
So I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But
yeah, man.
mind blowing.
So I want to talk a little bit before we get down to your work over the last several years. I want to.
We didn't finish my amp story, by the way.
Okay. All right. Let's wrap up. Let's get to the idiot story.
I was like, we're gonna be here all day. Okay, wait. So I was borrowing a friend's amp. So after that band, I started borrowing a buddy's amp who had. It was like when Fender came out with like the Blues Deluxe. It was like all the tweed, like modern tweed.
Right.
Like Blues Junior, Blues Deluxe, like series, probably like 2002, 2003, whatever that was. So I literally was borrowing this dude's amp for all my gigs and like rehearsals, and I still owned the Stage 112, but I didn't use it anymore because I was like, it's not a tube amp,
right,
whatever.
Right.
And so I was doing all that. Oh, and by the way, yeah, the overdrive thing, to finish that, it depends on the amp. Every pedal like is going to sound good depending on the amp. It's like, that's why I hate the conversation when people are like, which is the best overdrive? Like I watch all these reviews and all these things, and it's like, you can't actually do it like that because the way that a tone stack and interacts with a certain amp is like, they're combos. Like you can't just, this one's better than this. It's like how, anyway, that's a whole other thing. That makes me so mad. So anyway, so I was using this amp, and then SNL came 2007. I got the gig, and I had 2 Fender Strats to my name. Okay. And I only got the second one like a few years before that when I was in that band because I needed like a backup guitar when we were like doing stupid tours and van shit. So I had 2 guitars, 2 Strats, not really an amp. So I went amp shopping. So what did I do? So I went and bought the most expensive amp you could possibly buy. And I bought a Bruno Super Lead, which at the time,
God. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
And at the time, like nobody was doing Dumble copies,
Right.
But this was like the Dumble copy. I didn't even know what Dumble was, mind you. Okay, I just knew that I played all the like hip boutique amps at Ultrasound rehearsal space in New York, and this was the one.
Yeah.
I was like, this just makes me happy. So I ended up buying that head, which was disgustingly expensive.
Right.
So I went from like having nothing to like buying the most expensive amp like in history that I could ever pay for. And then that year I also had the first guitar that was ever made for me was made. That was my Nash Strat, which is right here next to me.
Yep.
So that was the first like thing anyone's ever made for me, which was like wild. And I didn't even really have like a pro pedal board. I had like a shitty makeshift thing. I just thought it was, the irony of it all was just like so funny to me and like never lost on me. And I always I loved like the whole, you could be doing something on such a mega scale, but it does not matter.
Right.
Like,
you're so right on that, man. I mean, you really, because you said you started SNL in '07, and you're right, like you had that gig for how long?
13 years.
Yeah. And so for me, when I was coming up, especially getting started in music and guitar, there was sort of this thought of like, you have to have like your shit together with your rig, and you have to have X amount of pedals, and you have to have all this stuff. And it's like, no, you really don't have to have any of that stuff. And in fact, it can be a detriment if you have that stuff and you don't really know how to use it or don't know how to find your sound on it. It's really, you know, it's better to have stuff that you know and you're comfortable with and that you can play well, rather than have the most expensive boutique whatever, you know what I mean? So I want to back up, and before we get to the SNL thing, I want to know about like a young Jared. How did you find guitar? What was it, you know, just kind of get me from where you started playing up till, you know, the SNL thing.
Yeah. Well, it's actually a pretty easy story there. My dad was like Clapton is God kind of guy, Rolling Stones fan. Still never really got into that. More Beatles guy, but anyway, I do like them, Rolling Stones, by the way, but not my favorite. But actually, I think I like them more and more and more as I get older.
Yeah.
But my dad was a huge music fan. I took lessons in school, like piano in like 3rd grade. I hated it. It sucked. 4th grade, like we were allowed to take like lessons. I wanted to play saxophone. My dad said no. And so since I walked to school, he was like, why don't you just take drumsticks and a drum pad? I was like, cool. Started playing drums. Loved it. Around 5th or 6th grade, a little unclear of when, but I started, he asked the new question, hey, you like the drum stuff's going well? Like, do you want to take private lessons outside of school? And I said, yeah. And so he's like, you could do drums, keys, you know, piano or guitar. And I chose everything until finally the last option was guitar that he said yes to. He said no to everything else. I was like, okay, I will take guitar lessons. Started doing that. And then I was terrible. Took me a long time, you know, like to play a C chord. It was like, I was like, this does not work. Like, how do you do this? And I stuck with it. And then around 8th grade, I was like proficient. I was playing like Kirk Hammett solos. I was just like shredding, and but I was also like studying the classics as well.
Right.
So that was kind of like the start of the band world. I was going to like Frenchwood's music, Frenchwood's Performing Arts Camp, which is where I played in like some bands with Adam Levine from Maroon 5 and Jesse from Maroon 5 and whoever else, like Natasha Lyonne I was in a band with.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, like just super random things. So I kind of was doing all that stuff. And then high school, I was still playing drums, by the way. So I was like jazz band, concert band, marching band. But I was playing guitar in like rock bands outside of school.
Yeah.
I was taking private lessons like on the reg. Junior year, I started seeing this like kind of cult guitar leader in our area, Marty Soleil, who was like made you get this whole book, and he had this whole system, and like he wouldn't let you like show your book to any of the other students. It was a cult. It was a guitar cult for sure. And like he was a very strange dude, and he would like make you listen to like his acoustic solo guitar pieces, and like he would like roll cigarettes and stuff, like, and he was just like dude, like man of the mountains, like jazz guy, weird. It was bizarre. But all my guitar buddies from like our towns like went to this guy, and he was like the guy that can help you learn jazz to like get into college. Right. So I did that. Junior year, I went to the Berkeley Performance Summer Program for 5 weeks. Realized I do not want to like practice 4 or 5 hours a day in a room or play jazz. Like, this is the worst thing ever. Right. I just wanted to be a rock and roll star. You know, I didn't give a shit.
Yeah.
And so I ended up like not touring or anything like that. I wasn't in a famous band yet, so I guess I had to go to college. Went to the Hart School of Music for jazz guitar performance, because like what else are you gonna do? Right. And music business, and then I I realized like, well, that was just a stepping stone. I knew I had to be in the city, New York City, because I lived like 30 minutes away, but I knew like, if you want to make it, that's where you go. So I ended up being like, I can't stay at Hart. Like I was going to waste another year of my life if I stayed.
Yeah.
So I told my parents, they tried to get me into NYU. It was past the deadline and I couldn't get into the music business program because I was like, I don't want to do jazz. Like I just want to like rock out and be in bands. So didn't get into the business program because I'm not a good math or science student. And there's like the Stern Business School is like hardcore.
Right.
So I didn't get in there. So we hit up the jazz department and the guy remembered my audition from the previous year. And he was like, yeah, like we're going to get him in. So he totally hooked me up, which was really nice of him. And then I did a semester. I took guitar lessons with, I called him, I feel bad for saying this on a podcast, but sorry, Bruce Arnold, but we called him the Guitar Nazi. I should have called him the Guitar Z. Hindsight's 2020.
Right.
He was just like this, like super, like intense, like dictatory guitar teacher kind of guy. And he had like his systems and his books, and he was really into like atonal and like music and John Cage and all this weird shit. But some of his stuff was really interesting, and I did learn a lot. But he gave me like a C+ once for like my guitar class, like for lessons. I was like, how do I get a C+? Like I'm a good guitar player, and like I was doing the work. It wasn't like I was just like effing off. He was crazy. Anyway, so semester rolls in, and I'm just like, I talked to the guy who got me in, and I was like, I don't want to do like this is not what I want in my life. I don't want to study jazz 4 hours a day. For what I want to do, and I wasn't coming from like a place of ego when I told him this, but I was like, for what I want to do, I am good enough. And like, I had the like wherewithal to know that.
Right.
I knew like Allman Brothers and like pop rock and all this like the classic rock stuff and the jam band that I was also in. Like, I knew that like I didn't need jazz school.
Right.
To be successful at that. And I was happy with where I was at. So anyway, he hated me. And I transferred into the music ed department, finished at NYU with a Bachelor's of Science, and I took my New York State certification. So I was a certified music teacher for however many years that lasts, but I was never going to teach.
Right.
And I was in bands this whole time in college. I was in like a jam band that eventually kind of turned more like Radiohead, Third Eye Blind, Jeff Buckley, weird kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then I was in this pop rock band that got signed right when I graduated. So we got signed, did a major label album, which was like the first time I got to see like behind the curtain on like recording and producing. And so that was like huge for me.
Yeah.
And that was also a really eye-opening like gear moment, because that was the first time I got to play some of like all these like, you know, they like the engineer like from Boston, this guy Ducky, brought like all of the like, you know, the Fender Bassman and the Plexi head and like, you know, blah blah blah, and like we rented amps and all like the real stuff.
Yeah. And
it was like I was like a kid in a candy store, you know, like we didn't have that many guitars, but I brought my Black Strat, which was like my number one, you know. I brought my dad's 69 Gold Top Deluxe.
Yeah.
Which is sick. I still have that.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was like, that was a really interesting experience. And then, you know, I the band wasn't the right fit for me for all reasons. I ended up leaving, and actually me and the other guitar player like quit together.
Right.
We're like, guitar chair, we're out. So that was after a couple years. So we quit, and then I started doing my own producing and recording of my own stuff. I did my first Jared Scharff and the Royals like EP, which was everything played by me, produced by me. And then that band kind of became more of a focus, and so I was doing that till basically 2006, and then I was like Dr. Luke at the time, who I'd kind of known, he had offered he was like, hey, well, he didn't offer me anything, but he said like, I want you to be like my replacement for the show when I leave.
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm like, I don't want to do that.
Why not?
No.
What about it was not appealing to you?
I wanted to be a rock star. I wanted to be Jimmy Page. Like that was always my dream, was to be like, you know, the guitar god, you know, like the GOAT.
Yeah.
In like a crazy band.
Right.
Creative and interesting and like different and on its own thing and like, you know, a big thing. And so I was still trying to figure that out. And then a year goes by and I had a lot of friends, you know, like the music scene in New York was pretty like big back then. And like, cause people could still afford to live there and like play music and stuff.
Right.
Like not anymore.
Not anymore. No.
Yeah. And so they were like, oh yeah, like my buddy blah, 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 like just auditioned for the SNL band. And I was like, and I remember my good friend and bandmate drummer, Kevin Rice, who's gone on to play with like Christina Perri and Mike Posner and like everybody.
Yeah.
He was like, why don't you like just do the audition? And I was like, yeah, I guess I should. Cause like I didn't have shit going on, you know,
Right.
I was like just trying to make it and like nothing was happening. And I ended up getting an audition but I first had to send some of those YouTube videos, like some of the early stuff that I posted. This is like long before Unnecessary Shredding. And then, so I sent that to Lenny, the band leader, Lenny Pickett, famous saxophone player.
Yep.
And then that got me an audition, and he was just like, hey, why don't you come in, we'll have a chat, and like bring a guitar. So I was like, this is by email. So I'm like, is this an audition?
Yeah, right.
He's like, well, you can call it what you like. And it was just like, I was like, oh shit, this is an audition. So we end up having like a 2-hour conversation or 2.5 hours. And then like I played 4 songs.
Right.
And mind you, like I hadn't really read, sight read music really since college. So this is 6 years later. And then, but I think I had been like starting to work on it because I knew I was going to audition.
Yeah.
And just in case, I was like, so I did do that. And the first song he gave me was, If You Don't Know Me By Now. If you don't know me by now, you can never know me. But it's in the key of B, which has like, I forgot, whatever sharps. I don't feel like figuring it out right now.
Yeah, dude, you're asking me. I haven't. Somebody in the chat in the comments will correct us.
Yeah, well, you got to do beat GIF, and then you got to go backwards. I was like, I don't just feel like doing the math. A bunch of sharps.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, C sharp, G sharp, whatever. We can figure it out. But, and so it was in 6/8. So like the math of it all, I was like, I totally bombed the reading. It was like he should have just been like, okay, you can go.
What?
It was so bad. But then the next song, and I don't think I've ever like really said this ever to anybody, but I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you
I'm getting the scoop. I'm getting the scoop here, man. This is good.
Well, now that I'm not in the band, I could say this.
Okay.
Because I left. You know, I left this year, right?
Yes.
Okay, great.
I did know that.
Yeah. I was like, it's time. 13 years. I'm good. Producing.
Good
Let's
run.
go. LA. I'm good.
Right.
Sorry. Anyway, we'll get to that. So, all right. So, I knew the bass player, Tim LaFave, who's like, you know, Tedeschi Trucks. He was in that band for a while. And just, he was like a New York bass, like, staple in the scene.
I'm a big fan of LaFave. Like I'm a big fan. Yeah.
He's amazing. So for people who don't know, like he's played with like Wayne Krantz, always at the 55 bar. He was like one of the like jazz funky like bass giants like in New York during like an era of that music.
And correct me if I'm wrong, didn't he do all the bass stuff on the score to Ocean's 11? Wasn't that LaFave?
That I might not know, but he's like incredible, so I would not put it past him.
Yeah.
But he's like done all that stuff. He like recent years he was in Tedeschi Trucks for a long time.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I vaguely knew him, and I had someone like connect us, and I went to his apartment in Brooklyn one day, and the irony of that is also like it was when like Park Slope like wasn't even Park Slope yet, and it was like I've never been out that far, and it was just like, where am I? Like, which is so funny now because you're just like, oh yeah, like everybody lives there.
Yeah.
And he gave me like a CD of like all the like SNL songs that he ever like received, because he subbed on the show often.
Right.
And he gave me charts.
No.
Actually, no. Wait, no. I don't think he gave me charts. That part's hazy, but he gave me a CD.
Right.
I think he just gave me a CD. So I went home, dude. I like wore that CD. I listened to everything, and like almost memorized some of the riffs. Like I like did my homework. And so in that audition, the second song was one of the songs on the CD.
Nice.
So I had to like kind of faked that like I didn't know it. So I tried to like mess it up just enough and then like get it. But I was like, I don't fucking know this song.
No, it's a good point, because it's like if you bombed the first one super hard, you can't come out of the gate on song 2 and just absolutely nail it, or else you would have given yourself up. You know what I mean? That's actually really smart.
I was like, yeah, I can't be like, oh yeah, because I was like, that would be so like he would know like the jig would be up. So that song had a solo, and thank God I brought my full drive 2 at the time. It was the only distortion pedal I had.
Right.
And Lenny made me play a broken, remember those small Gallien-Kruger bass amps?
Yeah.
He made me play through that. Literally every knob did not work. You want to know like the epitome of the worst tone you can ever have? Plug into that amp.
Do you think that was part of his thing though, to try and like suss you out if you couldn't make it work with that amp, you know?
I've asked him about that, and he's like everyone plays with that amp when they come in the office. Like he didn't have anything else. Mm-hmm. Like, and he didn't give a shit.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So thank God I brought this distortion pedal, because I would have had to play like a solo with like the worst god awful clean tone in the history of sound. And so I like hit the pedal on, and I rip it. I'm like, this is it. I have to, like, if I don't win him over on this, it's over.
Right.
So I did my thing, and then we did 2 more songs. I left. And then it was like a month later. Like I didn't hear anything, but I kept reading. I borrowed all the books from Dr. Luke, like, and I had my own stuff, like the real book. I had the Charlie Parker, like Omni book. I had like Bach etudes from Lukács. I had the Berkeley Volume 1 and 2, like the Hal Leonard. Like I had all that stuff. I read an hour a day, and finally got the call back. Went in. I played with the entire rhythm section. So this was like the final 4 from like 30 or 40 or however many, I don't even know.
Yeah.
People had auditioned. So now here's the second little tricks that I pulled for this. So I knew the bass player from visiting often from the show, because my sister at the time worked on the show. She was the producer of the TV Funhouse cartoons. That's how I knew Dr. Luke.
Right.
They were friends because her best friend was dating Luke. So anyway, so I'd known James through that. So I kind of was like, all right, I kind of know James a little bit. You know, we've hung out at the after parties here and there. Like, he'll remember me. Cool. And then I was trying to figure out like how to get to like everybody, so there would be some sort of personal interaction or connection before I walked in the door.
Right.
But obviously, like, that wasn't going to happen with everybody. But a drummer who was like the drum sub for my band when Kevin, my drummer, couldn't do it, was the DW drum rep. Sean Pelton, the drummer, plays DW drums.
Right.
So he tells me Sean's playing like the weekend before, like the night before, I think, the audition. He's like, Sean's playing a gig at where was it? It was some venue. So I was like, let's go. I go, I meet him. I was like, yeah, what's up, man? Yeah, I'm coming into audition for the show, blah blah blah. So I just had some sort of personal thing.
Yes.
Now, does that matter? I don't know, but I thought it would. So anyway, Sunday rolls around the next morning. I get there. Now, trick number 3. the three other guitar players are all sitting on the couch, like just like warming up and like just shredding and like doing their thing. But like you can hear, like if you walk down the hall and go by the actual like room, you could actually hear the songs they're playing. So I just like went over there and just like listened to everybody and tried to like memorize the songs.
I think you
like,
just outsmarted everyone. I don't think it's not like you pulled the wool over anybody's eyes, because obviously you're a good enough player. Like, you're an amazing player. You had the chops for the gig. I think you were just smarter than everybody else.
Well, it's just like, I can't read that well, but I have great like ear, you know, what do you even call that? Like not ear training.
Pitch, you can just hear.
Yeah, like I can just hear anything and like I'll play it back. Like I have great like just great like musical hearing and great memory, like quick memorization for music. So I just like studied every freaking song. And then at one point James came out and like no one got up and said, like, but I like went up to James. And I was like, yo, what's up, man? Like, I don't know if you remember me. I'm Sam's brother, blah, blah. He's like, oh, cool. What's up, man? So like I tried to just do that. So anyway, I come in and like there's James, Sean, the drummer. There's like Leon Pendarvis, the famous organ player who switches to piano and plays the closing theme on the piano. Lenny and Valerie, maybe the percussionist. I don't remember. And Catrice, who was playing piano at the time. So there's like a bunch of people. So I'm nervous. I'm so nervous, dude. So nervous. Like probably the most nervous ever in my life. You know, a lot was riding on this.
Right.
So the first song comes and it's Sissy Strut.
Yeah.
Which I recommended, by the way, when he asked me, are there any songs you might want to possibly like audition to? And I was like, oh, Sissy Strut would be like a fun one.
Yeah.
There it was. So I knew that, didn't have to read it, all good. So they were like, so when the solo comes, just do your thing and like just give us a nod when you're ready. I was like, okay. Solo comes, as you know, it's like, for me, it's like all about like first impression. Like if you don't win them that song, you don't win them.
Right.
So I just did my thing and I went for it. Mind you, I have many, many years of jam band experience. So time constraints is not an issue for me. No time constraints. So I'm just going. And at one point they're like, okay, like, let's go back to the home. Like, yeah, they're like, all right. I'm like, okay. So after, everyone's laughing. Like they're all, it's like, it was almost the best icebreaker ever. Everyone's like dying. They're like, well, you really went for it. So then it was like the ice had broken at that point. We just did like the next 3 or 4 or 5 songs or whatever it was. And I went on my merry way. And I ended up getting a call that like, you know, a few weeks later that I got the gig. Mm-hmm. And the rest they say is history. Then I was on my way to getting an amp for the first time. Yep. And eventually getting a real pedal board. And like I had nothing, dude. I had like a M-Box Pro Tools and like 2 Strats and a solid state Fender amp. Yeah.
And you got the gig.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man. That is such a great story, you know, and it's cool to hear because I've been a fan of SNL forever. And I remember watching SNL when I was, you know, 13, 14, just getting into the guitar and like watching that band. And I can only imagine what it's like to be up there playing with those guys, like on that stage. It's got to be the coolest thing ever. And just physically, like, you know, I've literally watched you for 13 years on the bandstand with you know the special guests walking down next to you every single Saturday night and talk to them. I'm sure you've got just days worth of stories of behind the scenes SNL stuff. Some of it's probably not shareable publicly, but
you know, I want to interject for a second because I feel like I need to set the record straight. Everyone always assumes exactly what you thought, and the truth of it is that like it could not be further from that. The way I'd like to describe it, well, first of all, I always talked about the show as like it's the most consistently inconsistent show. Like, what is it? What's SNL like? That's what it's like. Every day, it's like the same, but never the same. So like the only thing that is is like, oh, and not even that's true, but I was going to say the only thing that is like dogmatically like the same is we show up, we have an 11 a.m. rehearsal, the band, and then at 7:20, it's already getting hazy, 7:25, we have to be on stage to start dress, and then there's we do a warm up for the audience, then we do the show, and then we have a break, and then at 10:55 back on stage, and sometimes that's not even correct either. Like when a football game goes long and the show ends up like starts later because there's like some championship game or like there's always it was never the same, and like, but that was essentially the most consistent thing of the show were those three things. But like what sketches you would have to play on that week, if you were going to record any guitars for some videos or sketches, if the band was playing on sketches and we would rehearse that, you know, the music, like every week was different music for the band. So like I would come in and I'd have to sight read new stuff.
Yeah.
And like, I'm not a good sight reader, but I have to get through it. You know, there were songs in my 13 years there that had like some interesting like unison lines that the whole band would play. I would just drop out. and I'm always like after dress rehearsal, I'm always like, oh, I'm going to like look at that before the show. Never did. Just didn't care. I was just like, oh, whatever. Like, I'll just, you know, like it's not that I didn't care about like, you know, being amazing for the band or showing up. It just some things just weren't important. You know, it's just like, if I can't play that one line, it's not a big deal. Everybody else is. They don't need me to also do it.
Right.
So when I say I don't care, it's like, it was like a judgment of like, I don't care enough because it's not really that important.
Right. What was your favorite sketch that you played on? Is there one thing that sticks out to you over those 13 years of like, man, it might not even be something that everyone knows, but what is to you like the pinnacle, the best thing you ever played on?
I love that. But before I answer that, I just want to finish. Where the band's like sequestered in their dressing rooms all day, and we have different call times and like the cast and all these things. So it's like a million moving pieces, like all kind of doing their own thing. So that's all that to say, like we don't interact a lot with like the hosts, the cast writers. Like there were people that'd be like, oh, do you know this person? Like you work at SNL? I'm like, who's that? They're like, it's a writer. I'm like, I've never met them.
Yeah. Yeah, I would imagine that like that because it's such a huge machine. Like you can just tell by the looking at it every Saturday night, the way that it's produced and the amount of content and just the schedule has got to be insane. There's no way that like it's a small, close knit group of people that everyone knows everyone. It's got to just be this massive monster. It's
like a moving town, and like a lot of people do know each other who are there every day, but like us as the band, we were only there pretty much one day a week. I was on call Thursday and Friday, and sometimes I would go in, but we're mostly there Saturdays. So like, you know, like the cast and the writers and like they all know like the camera guys, like they're with them 5-6 days a week.
Right.
For us, it was a different scenario. So yeah, but it's really a lot of moving parts, and everyone's in their own everyone's just doing stuff all the time. So it's not like we're all sitting there together. Like I'm not hanging out with like, you know, Mick Jagger all day when he hosts, you know, although I do have a Mick Jagger story, but
I'm sure you
know,
do, man.
Anyway, all that to say, that's kind of like what that scene was.
Right.
And then to answer your question, can you repeat it one more time?
So you played on a lot of sketches because I remember watching the show where you can tell like maybe a host or one of the cast members is miming a guitar part or like there's a band and they're playing. Like my favorite one of recent memory was it was like I want to say it was like Fred Armisen and Dave Grohl, and they were
that's
at
the one
wedding.
I was going to
say. Okay, good. Go ahead.
That's the one. No, that's the one.
Yeah, dude.
Yes.
We should explain for people that haven't seen it. So the premise of the sketch was like, I'm trying to remember who all was there. It was Dave Grohl, was Ashton Kutcher on that one, Fred Armisen, and then who else?
Bill Hader.
Bill Hader.
It was always Fred and Bill.
Okay.
That was like their sketch.
Right. And the one I remember from most recently, this must have been like what 2 or 3 years ago, I want to say. And
it happened it was like 3 or 4, maybe at least 3 times it's happened. And like Grohl wasn't always in it. I don't think Ashton was always in it. Or maybe I don't remember like who else had done it, but it happened a few times, I think.
So basically the sketch is there's a wedding, and it's basically the dads and the uncles at the wedding, and they get up to like, oh, we're going to get the band back together and, play a few songs at my daughter's wedding, whatever. And they get up and it's a punk band from like the late 80s, early 90s. And dude, it's on YouTube. It's great.
Maybe it happened. Maybe I'm thinking that it happened like at a dress once and didn't make it to air. And then we tried it again. And maybe that's where I'm thinking it was more than once. My memory gets a little hazy when you've played like hundreds of shows. But yeah, it's that show. It's the funniest thing. So Fred does his like punk band thing at the wedding. And that one time was obviously thrilling because I was playing like rock punk stuff, like with Dave Grohl playing drums.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like never in my life did I think I was ever going to get to like jam with Dave Grohl. And I talked to him after. I wonder if that was the Them Crooked Vultures show or the Foo Fighters one, because I have a good story about the Them Crooked Vultures one with John Paul Jones. But I was talking to him after. I was like, it was so fun to like get to jam with you on that sketch. He was like, oh, that was you? He's like, I was gonna say, I was like, I don't know who was playing guitar, but they were like right in there, and I was like, it's definitely not Ashton. And I was like, yeah, that was me. So like, I basically got a compliment from Grohl, and I was like, yes.
Yeah, that's the best part about that sketch is you can tell the guys on stage are miming guitar and bass and everything, and Grohl's up there, and he's like actually Dave Grohl playing it.
Yeah.
Totally, it was so awesome. What's your Them Crooked Vultures story? I gotta hear that.
Oh, this is one of my all-time favorite SNL moments. So we used to play Out on the Tiles, the Zeppelin song, for the warm-up, and not it was part of the repertoire. It wouldn't happen all the time, but
right.
So Lenny put it on that day when John Paul Jones was going to be there. I'm sure he knew that, and that's why he did that, or maybe he didn't. I don't know, but I'd like to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's a smart man. So we play the song. Grohl comes out during the dress rehearsal warm up and is watching us. Which already is exciting. And then during the live warm up, so the next time we do it, he brings out John Paul Jones. So I'm standing in the front of the stage. I'm playing like Out on the Tiles while John Paul Jones is watching me, and I'm like taking solos, and I'm just like, how is like the bass player of Led Zeppelin watching me play a Led Zeppelin song like right now? It was just like it was mental. Like I can't even process like what that feeling feels like. It was just like, what is happening?
Yeah, that would make me shit my pants, I think.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know if I can.
No, I mean that's like one of the feelings. It was it was crazy. That was a fun one. Another one, like Paul Simon, we played with Paul Simon during the 40th anniversary, and he actually like made everyone like get up and give the band a standing ovation. He was like, I like, the show is blah blah blah, like, but like I'd love to, everyone to give a big thank you to the band who's been here the whole time. And like he said something so nice about like how great we are, and like how, like, I don't remember, but it was just like the sweetest thing to give props to us. And he had us like stand up and take a bow, and
wow.
Like everyone like got up and clapped for us. Wow. And like on TV, and like no one, the band, it's like we weren't on, well, I say we're not, I'm not in the band anymore, but like we're not on the opening credits anymore, and I think I always felt as I kind of got older and later on in the show, I started to kind of like pull away a little bit, because it was like, I thought it was going to bring me like this notoriety, and it was like, I was going to be like part of like what people think of like as like the show, and then the identity, like the young gunslinger coming in, like it's going to be like a GE thing, maybe like revitalize that. But it wasn't never about that. It was always about the show, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
But like, as a guy coming in who wanted to be like, you know, in a big band and like do big things and had big aspirations, it was, you finally kind of realize like, oh, right. Like, this is not about me. This is about the show. When I do get a band shot where I'm standing in front of the camera and they're going to commercial, it's not because they're trying to feature me. It's because they're like, they've cut sketches and they need to add time.
Right.
And so I started to kind of understand that. And I just kind of realized like, oh, okay, like, that's fine. It's not about me. I'm doing this job. And I'm super blessed to have an amazing musical job, but don't try to look for like something that's not there.
Right.
So that was like, you know, so when Paul Simon like would basically like give props to the band, where I was always feeling like myself and the band like wasn't really getting much love and like no one really gave a shit. It felt like we were finally validated in a really serious way. And it was really like humbling and just really, I don't know. It was really magical. It was cool.
Well, and coming from Paul Simon too, I imagine, you know, somebody like a legend like that giving you that sort of validation, that's got to be pretty special, I would imagine. So on the show, you mentioned like your sight reading chops were a pretty necessary part of the show. What else musically do you think was really important in you, like getting that gig and holding on to that gig? Because it sounds like a pretty heavy hitting band in terms of like having your chops together, being able to read standard notation, being able to sight read stuff on the fly, like, and things being able to like changing at the drop of a hat, even during the show even. So what do you think the most important skill set that you have lent itself to your success in playing on that show for 13 years?
Right. That's a good question. You know, we would, like I said, that consistently inconsistent thing, we would be in the middle of a song during a commercial break and like they would cut the commercial, we'd come back early, or they'd add extra time, and on the fly, like our not Lenny because he's playing sax, but Penn, we call him Leon Pendarvis, he's like has the mic, he's playing organ, so he's got a talkback, so he'd be like, cut to the last bar, last chord, and 3, 2, 1, and then we're done. Or like, you know, okay, we're gonna repeat, go back to letter K, horns out, like he'd be like basically doing all the like audibles, like, and it always was changing, always. So like we would never play a song the same ever. The band would never play the song, even if we wrote like down the whole actual score of the music, we would never play it the same because we're all very like interactive. Everyone's coming from like jazz, funk, blues backgrounds. So anyway, so that's like just a little peek into like what that was like. So it was basically just controlled chaos. Yeah. You know, like, so we all had to like be like one big wave, like morphing and moving together always. It's like really wild. But yeah, so skills and things to get and maintain that job. I said this to someone the other day. The irony of this all is that I always thought of myself, you know, I wanted to be this like, you know, Jimmy Page type icon, right? Like someone with a vision, someone with their own voice, and making creative and interesting and really being like a visionary and amazing at what they do. So to me, that doesn't mean like you can play this jazz gig, you can play this blues gig, you can play this soul gig. Like that doesn't mean that to me. That doesn't matter. It means like being great at what you do. So that was kind of always my approach. But the irony of all of it is that on the way to that, I studied all these different things. And I like got pretty good at like understanding the nuances of what they were. So like I studied, you know, I started off studying like the Allman Brothers videos when I was a kid, and like Warren Haynes solos, and like Clapton and Cream, you know, and SRV and Hendrix. And then that brought me to the check out the earlier blues stuff, all the Kings, you know, and literal Kings, Freddie Albert, you know, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like Albert Collins, like, so like I studied all that stuff, you know, and then like I studied jazz to get into college, and then I was like in jazz ensembles in college because that's what you had to do. And so like I got like a bunch of that vibe, and I studied, like I listened to the like Metheny and Schofield and all these guys, and like and the greats Coltrane and like Wayne Shorter and Herbie, like everybody, like, and I put in time, you know, and like. And then also in jazz school, like everyone wants to be young and cool, so like everyone was getting into like the funk shit, like, so it's like the funky jazzy fusion world. So like I was getting into funk stuff, you know, and then I was in this pop rock band, so I was like a jam band like rock guy, so I had to learn how to play pop music. So I studied like Goo Goo Dolls and Counting Crows and like early like the Benz era Radiohead, because they had great pop guitar lines, and like so I studied that, you know, and like each step of the way, like I did all these things. And so by the time the show rolled around, it was like we did lots of blues songs. I could authentically play blues solos,
right,
and know what that sounds like. We do tons of funk stuff. I studied funk. I could play funk. We do tons of R&B and soul. That I didn't really study, so I had to work on that, and I got better over the years on that stuff. We did jazz. We would do jazz songs. I pretty much knew how to like fudge that. Like I wasn't expert in any of this stuff, but like I could do it, you know. And like strumming an acoustic guitar, like for a folk campfire sketch.
Yeah.
You know, had to do that. You know, like I had to know all that stuff, and like my years of recording and doing all those things, like when they would be like, hey, can you like do something like this, I would know how to get the sounds, or like, hey, this is the era of like the vibes, so like I would know what I need to sound like. Or the last bunch of years, Eli, the musical director who wrote most of the music for like the sketches, would literally, like when we had sketches to do, he would give me a bass chart. He would not even make a guitar chart for me.
Right.
He's like, oh yeah, it's like Bootsy Collins vibe. All right, cool. He'd be like, funk thing. Cool. He'd be like, hip hop, like 90s hip hop. Cool.
Right.
Like, and I would just like create my
That's so awesome.
Cause like I knew all the things, and like, so I think for that specific gig, that's why I think I was able to do the gig. But what Lenny would always tell you about me is that when it came time to go, like I had the fire, you know, like as Steve Ture, our trombone player, would say, he's like, oh, you got the cojones, man. He literally sounds like that. So like, you know, when it was like my time to shine, like I just go for it, you know, like, so Lenny loved that I brought like the energy and the fire to the band, you know? And I think I'm kind of like one of those, like, I'm like a button pusher kind of guy, which can be very annoying to anyone who doesn't want to be bothered at that moment.
Right.
But I kind of really grew into my personality of who I was, like really grew into like how I played in the band as I got older and more comfortable. And I would just fuck with people. I would just do the craziest shit. I would just make weird noises. I would do weird shit, play out shit. I would just like fuck with, I would like play. I was just like, but it was like in a fun and musical way. But I would just like, I was carefree, you know. I was just like exploring and pushing the music like away from what the paper was as much as possible, you know. And like towards the end, it's like I didn't read a lot of the written stuff. Like I know what the vibe is. I know what he's trying to do. Where do I go from there? How do I interact with the soloists when we're playing? Like, you know, I would just like some funk songs. I don't know. I would just do different stuff all the time. Like I was always pushing it. And I think like they really loved that kind of 3-dimensional quality to bringing like the paper, like the music that we have to read in front of us, to like what we're doing.
Right. Yeah, because I can imagine as a producer and an MD, you're looking for you've chosen everyone in that band for a reason, and you've chosen them because you know that they're going to bring their unique style and try and pull the music off the page and make it musical, which is so important in a setting like that. And yeah, I mean, hearing you describe it and watching you play this stuff for years, I mean, it makes sense. I think you were the perfect person for that gig. Now you mentioned that you've left the show this year. You're in LA, and so what's next for you? What are you working on?
So I was producing basically since 2000. Well, really since that first gig with the major label, like with that album, like ever since that recording, it was like I always knew that after I was a rock star, which never happened, I was going to be a producer. That was always the goal. And so it's always been in my brain, and I've always been interested in it. And then I started producing like right after I left that band, started like recording and making. I mean, I was making music on my 4-track in high school. Like I was always, that was always like I loved recording, and so I was doing that. And then I think 2007 when I got the gig, I was coming out to LA all the time, and we had that's my first year we had a writer's strike. It's, by the way, my first year we had a writer's strike, so we had like 4 months off on SNL. My last year, the season ended promptly because of COVID. So my first and last year, like, weren't full seasons. How weird is that?
Oh my God.
Anyway, so what was I saying?
So you're producing stuff out in LA?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so I was going out to LA. I started this like writing production group, me and this one guy. We're like both two band guys trying to like make it in this, what is this pop stuff? And, this was before like everyone and their mother like had computers and also like did this. So we did that for a bunch of years, and I grew a lot, learned a lot, was in different production teams in New York for a couple of years. Like when I wasn't in LA, I was like focusing on that. And, eventually I took a break from all that because it was like, dude, it was brutal. It was like studios like every day, and then SNL, and it was like Sunday I was just like a zombie.
Yeah, right.
That was like my one day off, and it was like 6 days a week of just like brutal hours. It was after like a few years of that I was toast. So I took a break to not do that, but also focus on what I've always wanted to do, which was make a non-shred instrumental album. So I did that. I took like 4 or 5 years leisurely just creating the art for the love of music, and that's the Pearl Lion music stuff. And I have like a few videos out now. There's a light, there's a dark EP. The light is kind of in that Bon Iver, Explosions in the Sky, Sigur Rós kind of world.
Yep.
And then the dark is like Jack White, Jimmy Page, like fuzz riffs to like with like Kanye drums and like big like urban drum programming stuff. And so it's like a mixture of all these things that I love. So I did that, made a bunch of videos, got a lot of great press like Rolling Stone and all this great stuff. But it's hard to try to make it in music as we all know. So it was pretty challenging, but I did it for the love. I didn't really expect much. I just wanted to do that. So I have a double EP that's not even out yet still, but it's been done for like 6 years. I've got singles out, but anyway, that's a whole other story. And so about 3.5 years ago, I was like, man, I really miss working with other people. I miss working with vocalists. I miss working on pop songs. Mm-hmm. And I hit up a friend of mine. I was like, I was with that songwriting production team in 2007, Ross Golan, the sophomores. Ross is one of my good friends, and he's like he's a huge songwriter now.
Yeah.
Like Flow Ride Is My House, Ariana Grande, Dangerous Woman. Like he's
some
amazing.
Good cuts. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like a big dog, and he's amazing. And he always loved the Pearl Lion, like instrumental stuff that I did, like all the production on that. And I had this idea to make someone gave me this idea, so it wasn't my idea, but a manager friend of mine, Dave Silverstein, was like, yeah, you should make these guitar packs and send them out to producers and get cuts that way. And I was like, yeah, that would be cool. And then I also wanted to like work with singers again and songs. And I also wanted to like do more stuff in the rap space because I felt they were really free with like the music they created. Whereas I felt pop at the time was very like closed.
Right.
So Ross pitched me to Warner Chappell. Ross had been signing writers and producers. So we did a joint deal, Ross's company, which is Unknown Music, and Warner Chappell. So we did a publishing deal. And then that first year I went out to your city for many times. Basically was like my second home. So I spent like probably a total of 6 weeks in Atlanta, like different times.
Where were you working? What studios were you working in?
All the ones. Like the, you know, like what's that like by like I haven't been there in 2 years, so like
So
it's all
Tree Sound is basically,
I've been to Tree.
Yeah, so I live 10 minutes from Tree.
Dude, I literally like my last day, I think, of my second to last trip, maybe, I did a session with like Mr. Young Thug.
Yeah.
In the studio at Tree Sound.
Yeah.
Before I got on a plane like a few hours later. It was crazy.
Man. That's awesome.
Yeah, so Tree Sound, that's like the one that's like kind of 30 minutes out, right?
Yeah, and it's like it's kind of hidden. It's right off the main highway, and there's like a bamboo sort of forest in front of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so I've been there a few times. I've been to, I can't think of the names now. It's right next to Stankonia.
Oh yeah, not Doppler. A lot of these rooms have closed now too, which is the sad part. But
there was one, and then they changed the name like a few years ago to like a new name.
I can't remember what it is now, but
yeah, but those places, and honestly, also like a lot of these dudes' houses, like because I was just working with beat makers.
Yeah.
So I would just go bring my guitar, and like I would bring a suitcase with my Kemper head.
Yep.
Pedals in a monotic, and my Strymon Zuma, and I would set all of it up every time. No pedal board. I brought one guitar. Yep. You know, and like that's just what I did, and it was like I did that for the first year, and then the second year, one of the guys from Warner Chappell, the Atlanta guy, was fired, so I didn't really have anyone there, so I kind of was like doing my own thing. But that year, the cuts started coming, and then by the third year, I'd still been like sending out all these packs and like working with these people and sending out all these guitar ideas and productions that I've been doing, and I ended up like now having like 60 songs come out or something crazy.
Wow. And so when you're saying cuts, you mean like you co-produced stuff, or you played guitar on, you co-wrote, like all the above?
Yeah, like usually in the rap world, I would basically have written all the music and produced my own session with all the sounds and everything, and I would send it to beat guys, and they would make the beat, and then they would have the contacts, and then they would get it cut and placed, and there it is. Yeah. So that would be co-production, co-write, blah blah blah. So I was doing a lot of that, and then also in the room stuff, like, you know, I've done sessions with like Sam Smith and like her. I've been in like the studio with Mike Will Made It a bunch, you know, like all like Timbaland called me once. I mean, we had like an hour conversation, like just like crazy shit. So I've done a lot of that. And then I've also done like sessions where like, you know, I'm more producing, doing the whole song and the tracks, and that's usually more in the indie and alt and like pop space. Right. So like just doing a lot of different stuff, and that's been just going like really well. I mean, I've been on like 4 #1 Billboard debut albums. I've had like multiple platinum records, platinum singles, gold singles. Yeah. And so like last year was always going to be my last season. Like that was always the plan. And then I came out, I was flying back. Like I was literally only in New York for my shows. Yeah. So I was doing like 15 trips a year. I don't even know. Yeah. No, it was awful. It was like the worst, but I knew every 1 week off was a 12-day week for me off.
Yeah.
Because we didn't have to be there till Thursday, Friday. So show week off. I fly here on the Sunday. I fly back a week plus then to Thursday, come back. If we have 2 weeks off, I stay longer, 3 weeks off, blah, blah, blah. We had the summers off. I was always in LA building all of this up. And yeah, now it just got to the point where I was like, I've had like a lot of big songs and big artists like G-Eazy, X-Ambassadors, Trippie Redd, DaBaby, Lil Baby, like Bad Bunny, like just Run for Short was like kind of blowing up. Dominic Fike, like all these like big, big artists, like some way big and some on the up, and it was time, I felt ready to like leave the cush job and the cush, but I didn't want to fly anymore. I didn't want to like it was just such a rat race of like the back and forth. COVID happened. I knew that I couldn't be flying back and forth all year, and that was going to hurt the production stuff that I've been working so hard on.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to be here full time, make music. And I still have those goals of like having music and songs that like impact in that big way. Like I did, that dream of my whole life of like being this big thing that, and it's not, when I say like big thing, I don't mean, again, I'm not coming from like an ego place. It's more like, I just want to affect like so many people. I want to I want to give back like how music has made my life like incredible and better in so many ways. And I want to do the same on such a big scale.
I know exactly how you feel with that. I did the hired gun thing and still do the hired gun thing. But for me, a big portion of starting this YouTube channel came from a similar place of that. It was not an ego thing. It was I want to do something that has my name on it, that I own, that I can build to impact a lot of people. Because for me, music has been like the one thing that essentially saved my life. Guitar specifically. It's like I can't do anything else other than play guitar, and I'm so glad that I have this thing, and so I feel somewhat responsible for taking the knowledge and experience that I've gained and am continually gaining and trying to share it with people. And the way I've looked at like my channel and everything to this point is I'm making videos and content that I wish I could have watched when I was 14, 15 years old and figuring out guitar and music and all this stuff, because I didn't have it. Nobody in my family was musical. I didn't grow up with teachers. I didn't grow up going to music school or any of that stuff. I was completely on my own trying to figure all this stuff out. And, in some ways that was good, and in a lot of ways it held me back. But yeah, I feel that I resonate with that thing that you're talking about of just wanting to kind of take what you've gained and learned and sort of turn it around and give it back to people,
Yeah, it's like a bigger thing. It's like I've never in the history of my life ever wanted to be a hired gun, and I can't stand, like, it irks me to like play someone else's music. Like I can't do it. I've always had this problem. I can't, it like makes my skin crawl. I don't know what it is. It's like, I have to just do my thing. And like the SNL thing was kind of like this weird, interesting combination, because like, it wasn't my own thing. So right. I did have some struggles with like, I am a hired gun and I'm not playing my own music. But the difference with that and why it was so great for me was that it was a completely free creation zone.
Yeah, right.
Like I could just do whatever, like within the confines of actual music. But like the solo space, like was always just like being like so free to play solos and adapt the music. We did so many different styles of music, so it wasn't like I was just like, I mean, I remember when I was in my 20s and I dabbled with playing for like these like older guys that had money and like paid for like the young 20-year-olds to like be in their band.
Right.
And it was shit music. And dude, it was like, it sucked my soul.
Yep.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, I think being a hired gun is a beautiful thing. I have like pretty much every one of my musician friends, like are great hired guns and have like played with everyone, like the biggest bands in the world.
Yeah.
Like this is our industry now, you know, it's like when you get old enough, it's like your people are all the ones doing the shit.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's amazing. And I love that. I know people have been like Katy Perry's MD and like the craziest stuff. And I'm so happy for them. And I love going to see them and like seeing them do their thing in the show. And it's amazing. And they're playing incredible music.
Yeah.
So like, I think it's a beautiful way to make a living and a life. It just wasn't the life I wanted.
Right. And that's an important thing to know. It's an important thing to know about yourself to be able to look at something like that and just say like, hey, that is that person's version of success. But I know that if I was in that space, I would be so unhappy with it, you know? And I think that's something for younger players, I think, that are watching or listening to this, is try and start to think about that. And to some extent, it's going to take some experience. It's going to take you getting into that role or getting your feet wet, so to speak, in that one area to realize like, oh, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I need to go do something else. You
have to do it. I mean, you have to like do all these things to figure out what you love and what you don't. And, oh dang, I forgot. Dude, there's just so many things that I want to say and discuss, like as we're doing it, that it's just like so many things flying around. But yeah, it's an interesting world. But a thought came to my brain, by the way, when you asked me earlier, some of my favorite things to do on the show. I think playing the Californians theme before it was the Californians theme, like before Californians like became famous, and then hearing it every time they did the sketch for the number of years, hearing the intro that I played like that one day in Lenny's office, like always gives me so much joy. And I think it's like the thing I love the most. I'm like, I played out of the Californians theme. That's my guitar. But wait, damn, you had such a great, I was going to talk about your YouTube stuff. Like, okay, here's a perfect example. I've spent my whole life, my whole life is about guitar. I've watched, studied, listened, learned from Robert Johnson, who let's say, I guess, is like the father of blues guitar. Right. To like, whoever to Gary Clark Jr., who's now like one of the guys. It's like, so that means I've been familiar with every instrument that we've seen in famous bands, the rigs that you've seen them play, whether it's live in concert, whether it's videos, whether it's like, there was no YouTube, any of this stuff. But like, I know so much about guitar stuff. Like, I'm 41 now. This has been my whole life. Yeah. And I'm interested and I love it. Like, I love it. I still watch your videos and there's stuff I don't know that I'm like, oh, like I have no idea about. I watch your, like, what is a box sound? What is a tweed sound? What is a dumble sound? What is a P90? Like, I watch those and I learn things still. And like, you would think like someone like me who's like, I've been professionally playing music since 2001, like hired by like a corporation, you know, like give or take a few years in between. But like, it's so helpful to be able to go to a resource that's clear and gives you information that's valuable. Like, dude, I haven't played that many tweeds. I don't even know. Maybe I've played one. Like, right. I don't just go to music stores and like play things I can't buy, or like sometimes here and there. But like, I don't really know what like a 64 bassman's really supposed to sound like. Right. I can't tell you the difference between, like, I've played Marshalls, but like I don't really know like why I would go to a Plexi versus a JMP versus a Super. Like, I don't know. But like, I do, but I don't. Right. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know a lot about this stuff, and the fact that like some of these things I just don't know, because it's like there's just so much information out there, you know. Or like, I don't know like the difference. Like, why is like a low powered this or a high powered twin or last? I don't like. I know Fender amps,
Right.
Like, I've been playing Fender amps my whole life. I've played basements, I've played Princetons, Deluxes, different years, new ones, reissues. Some are amazing, some sound like shit.
Yeah.
And like, I had this conversation the other day with I think it was with Chris, the guitar player for Third Eye Blind, and I was like, I don't like, what are all these, like, I don't know what all these Fenders do. Like, what's the difference between a freaking Bandmaster and a Deluxe? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, what is I don't, what differentiates all these models? But like, I watch videos, I've played a lot of these things here and there, and I still don't know. So like, if I don't know, how are the younger people going to not? Like, how are they going to know?
Yeah.
Because now their amps are computers, and like the Line 6 are like, no, not even the Line 6 anymore. It's like, now there's like the Vox that has all the presets, and the Boss amp, and like, they don't even care. They don't even know. Right.
And that to me is a big thing. It's like, so I had Tosin Abasi on the podcast a couple weeks ago, and he and I were talking about this because, I'm very much like an old school kind of guy. Like, when I found music, I went back in time. And when Tosin found music, when he found guitar, he went like forward in time. So he and I musically are just worlds apart, but we were talking about a similar sort of concept. And my perspective on it is like, yeah, the modeling thing, it's fantastic. They're great tools. I love them. I use them all the time. But I know how to make them sound good because I know how the real amp is supposed to sound. I know how the real amp is supposed to feel. I know how to dial in a real amp in a real world. And the younger generation, I just turned 30. The guys, guys and gals that are 10 years younger than me, 20, 21, 22, who are just now coming into this, they may have played their entire time, years of playing guitar or bass or whatever, having never even like flipped a standby switch on a tube amp. And so they
might not even have ever played a tube amp.
Exactly. They've never had the experience. And so part of my thing with the, what is the sound videos is I'm just naturally curious. I have to do research. I don't know all that stuff off the top of my head. I know a little bit, and then I'm like, wait a second. I know Leo was designing this amp in the late 50s or whatever, and how did he do so? But part of it is like documenting on my channel the process of or the stories behind this stuff. That's really what it's about for me, is the stories. Like, what was Jim Marshall doing in London in 1966 when he was working on like the JTM 45? And like, what was he thinking?
Yeah.
What was Eric Clapton thinking when he was like 23, 24, coming into Jim Marshall's shop and buying like the Blues Breaker combo and all this kind of stuff?
But you know what it is? But here's the thing. Like, to me, all this stuff is so overwhelming because you'll never, like, it's so much knowledge that it's like going to a library and like, it's like you're never going to read all the books. It's just like, it's endless, right?
Yeah.
But like, I think a lot of people's thing back then, it's like, it was like the new amp that came out.
Yeah.
It's like when you were talking in your Vox thing where you're like, they made this amp because they needed the AC30 to be louder. So like they made this guy, or it's like, it's like everyone keeps, like when you were talking, I think you were talking about it was the Fender one. It was like, they made this one because like it needed more wattage and more cleans, like the Leo, because like
Leo
was
didn't
breaking up.
He wanted clean, and the tweed wasn't clean enough. Leo didn't like it, so he wanted cleaner.
Yeah, so it's just like everything else. Like everyone, like any company is just always trying to like improve their product and make a product that the customers are needing.
Yeah.
But like when you get this far back, 40, 50 years later, whatever it is, it's hard. Like, it's hard for me to figure out. And maybe it's like the ADD in me or whatever, but it's like, I've maybe played like two or three Princetons in my life, a few different Deluxes, like a tweed here and there, like, a twin, like not much tweeds.
Yeah.
Like a Bassman maybe here and there. Never played a Bandmaster. Maybe played one Vibrola. So it's like, I don't know enough. So it's like, how do you? if you don't have the personal experience of, I know what this feels like and sounds like, it's hard to know all this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and like, then it's just facts.
Right.
It's information.
Right. And from a production standpoint, because I get a lot of questions from younger players now that are saying like, hey, you know, I want to get into like, how do I become a full-time session player? How do I become a full-time, you know, I want to play on records and stuff full time. And my answer now is like, well, in my perspective, you kind of can't be a full-time just session player anymore. That industry it's not dead, but it's real hard. And the guys that are in Nashville and the guys that are in LA, they're doing that kind of thing, like the Tim Pierces and the Tom Bukovacs and all those guys, like they're still doing the thing, and they've been the dudes for like 30, 35 plus years.
That ended like 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's not a thing anymore. But what is a thing now is the route you're going down and the route that I'm trying to go down, which is like, if you want to play on records, make the records, right? Like make the song that you want to play on, and you can do it yourself. You can do it now easier than it's ever been done before. But that doesn't mean you're just immediately going to do it well. Just because you have access to the tools doesn't mean that you're going to make a masterpiece. And for me, a big part of my musical development has been understanding the tools that I have access to and understanding the contexts in which those tools were utilized to create some of my favorite sounds and records in the past. That's really what it's like a musical anthropology thing for me. It's like, what is it about a Tweed Deluxe amp? It's not the look. It's not, you know, necessarily the speaker or the tubes. It's that sound and how Keith Richards was using those amps on like the Stone stuff or whatever.
I'm trying to figure all that out now also.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is like it informs what you're doing now. It's like, oh man, you know this, producing stuff and writing stuff. It's like, oh man, I'm looking for this kind of sound. I'm looking for, you know, whatever, Jimi Hendrix live at Woodstock. Like I want that Strat sound. Okay, cool. Well, that was 100-watt plexi with basket weave cabinets and a greenback, you know, greenback 25s and a Strat or whatever. But even just knowing a little bit about that kind of stuff is really, I think, is important when it comes to the production and writing side, especially if you're going to produce and work with other people or work with other producers who are like, or writers or artists that are saying like, hey, I'm looking for this sound.
Because everyone's going to just give you like a reference, but they don't care about the gear. They don't know what the gear is, but they expect you to sound like that.
Yes.
So you have to know your craft, dude.
Exactly.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I spent the last 3 nights, probably 3 to 4 hours a night, going through new Kemper profiles. Just to put in my Kemper, because like I don't have I'm so envious that you have all those amazing amps. Like that's, to me, like amps are the holy grail. Like I use the Kemper all the time. They've been on big records that have sold hundreds of million, like 100 million streams or whatever, like that I've done, and they sound great. But nothing still sounds like a real amp to me, which is, by the way, why I hate distortion pedals. But I don't have the money right now to get all the stuff I want. I don't even have like my own like space yet. Like I'm just like, that will come in time.
Yeah.
But what I do have is a Kemper.
Right.
So I'm trying to so now I'm going back and like checking out the like 64 Bassman pack or whatever it is from Tone Junkie, or like the like I was going through the mini Blues Breaker Marshall last night, you know, or the Overdrive Special pack, or, you know, cause I've never played a Dumble,
right,
you know? Or like going through, like I went through the Tweed Deluxe and the Tweed, you know, and I was like, this is kind of that Neil Young thing. I kind of get it. Like, okay, cool. You know, or like, I'm just like, I'm trying to continually learn. Like, I know a lot. Yeah. But like, I feel like I don't know anything, you know? And in the production world, like, I feel like I've been producing since 2001-ish. Like, I feel like I'm just getting started and I don't know shit. Like, I'm trying to figure out like what mic preamps I want. I have this one, but is this better? It's like, it's a never ending craft. It's like anything that you do, you have to learn, study, try, and see what works for you.
Yep.
period.
It's constantly evolving, man. It's constantly evolving, you know? And that's the thing. I always get kind of annoyed at this never ending debate about the digital versus the analog thing. And you know, I see it all the time in my comments and on forums or whatever about people shitting on the Kemper or, you know, Helix users saying I'll never play another tube amp again or whatever it is. So tribalistic and weird. And
it's like, that's cool. Then do that.
Yeah. It's like, great. Whatever blows your skirt up, you know, but to me, it's like, these are tools for a job. Right. And yeah, I love the tube amps. I have the tube amps and I have them. And when I have the ability to play them either live or on a record or whatever, I'm going to do that. But at a lot of situations, the Kemper or the Helix or whatever is the right tool for the job, right? Like you flying to Atlanta and doing these sessions and having the ability and the opportunity to play and produce a track that's going to get 100 million streams. It's like, you're not in that session with your Kemper thinking like, oh man, really wish, you know, this song would be so much better if I had the actual like Tweed Deluxe in here. This is going to suck, you know?
No, you just have to you have to just like do what you have. Like every day I have sessions and I use the same clean profile every time, almost every time. And I'm like, why do I always use, like, there's so many others. But it just works.
It's the one.
It works.
Yeah.
I turn it on. It's quick. It's easy. It's the 69 Britmaster, by the way, by Michael Britt.
Yep.
I turn the gain down a little bit, bring up the presence, maybe, depending on the guitar.
Yep.
And it's like, you know, if I have a session, I just turn that on. I know it, like, I have my pedals that for that day I want to use, that I think I might want to use. I have a good clean sound. It's like, okay, I know this works. It's fine. Is it like, you know, a ribbon and a this and like a little bit of a room mic? Like, no, it's not. Would I love that? Yes, I would. I would much prefer that, but I don't have that. And I can't do that. I'm staying in my sister's house before I get my like new spot. And it's like, I'm not cranking an amp. Yeah. You know, even if it's like, it's just not possible. Like, I don't have, you know, a 1959 Les Paul but I have this great custom shop R8 that sounds like a Les Paul. Great, it'll do. Okay, I'm going to use that. That's what I got. You know, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I got SNL with, like, I didn't even own an amp and I just had 2 Strats. Like, you just do the best with what you can. Like I'm with you, like the digital analog thing, but ultimately, like you said, it does not matter. Right. If you like using a Helix and that's how you get your sound and it inspires you, then you don't ever need anything. Great. You're actually better off. You will save hundreds of thousands of dollars in your lifetime and like lots of like less body problems from carrying this huge basement sack or whatever. But like it doesn't matter. It's all about what you do with the things you have. And I have my thoughts on the Kemper. I use it every day. I've used it since 2000. I don't know, 8, 9, 10. I mean, dude, I was in the house band for the Emmys. I used the Kemper. I didn't use any amps because I needed to have lots of amp sounds. Right. Was I going to bring like 4 amp heads in an ISO cabinet, like with the speaker like 20 feet behind the stage? Like, no.
Having the cartage truck pull up to the theater, loading your shit in. Yeah.
Like, could I have done that? Yes. But that was going to be I knew that was going to be a pain in the ass for everybody. Yeah. So I didn't do it. Right. Let me just use the Kemper. I got the floorboard. I got plenty of dope, clean sounds, drive, dirty, whatever. And it crushed. It crushed. Did I ever care once? No, not once. Because you're just playing. You're doing it. Yep. But like, you know, I was going through all these presets last night, and I'm like, some of these don't sound as great when the compressor and the reverbs are not on. But like, I don't really want to use effects on amps. I just want to get amp sound. But it's like, all right, so then don't use those, or try to, or like, oh, like the dirty stuff, I feel like probably sounds a little more believable than like the clean stuff overall, you know, because like usually in a track that's going to be more compressed and it's going to be like, it's going to need to kind of sound like that anyway. So it's like, if the end result's going to be like that, I don't care if it's like not quite as floaty as like a real amp. It's like, it's fine. It doesn't matter. Yeah. You know, like if eventually I have the Marshall that I love and the Vox that I love, and I've got an aux, or I have a place where I could have cabinets, and like that feels better, infinitely better to me, then I'll use that.
Right.
But if I don't, what's the point in like spending time being like, what's better? And it's just like percentages.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
you were splitting hairs. It's a law of diminishing returns, and yeah, it's like, a never ending.
Yeah, like do you like the Memory Man, like with the circle knobs? Do you like the Memory Man with circle knobs and the point? Do you like the memory toy, the new one? It's like, it doesn't. Whatever you like, get it. If you want to spend $500 because that's the best delay you've ever heard, get it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like the circle knobs. I like the circle knobs with the point because it's a little brighter. Like, it's just a preference.
Right.
You know, like, so get what you like. I use, you know, like I would love to have a spring reverb tank from Fender back in the day, but like, I don't want to spend $1,000 or more on a tank that like maybe sounds good, maybe doesn't. So like, I have the Surfy Bear, you know, pedals that have the actual springs.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Sometimes I like the Strymon Flint better.
Right.
That doesn't have any springs or anything analog.
Right.
Sometimes that's the right sound. Sometimes the Surfy Bear's the right sound. When I have like the funds and the time to do it, maybe I find the perfect spring reverb tank of my dreams, and then I get it. And maybe it sits on a shelf.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't. It doesn't matter though.
Right. Man, Jared, this has been such a great conversation. This definitely won't
We're only
be our
scratching
last.
the surface.
I know, it really is, man. Oh, is there anything?
It's like an ocean, and like we're just like floating on the top.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything we can plug for you here before we sign off?
I mean, honestly, it's like I don't even know anymore. I just all the production stuff kind of does its own thing because it's like the artists and they have their fans. I mean, if people want to check out some of like my more personal like art, that would be the Pearl Lion instrumental stuff, which
cool. I
love. There's some crazy videos that are out that you could just search Pearl Lion and it'll come up, or it should. It's also on Spotify, so like if people want to check that out, that's cool. But yeah, man, there's so many more gear things I want to talk about for another time or whenever. But I mean, we have a lot to discuss.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But I love that you have the same philosophy as me. I think if anything, if the people listening, if there's anything that they could take away from our conversation, is the last thing we landed on. It's like, don't get too bogged down with like what you think you need to have or what you don't have or what you do have. Just make the best music, sonically or not sonically. Like, it doesn't even matter.
Right.
Like, just make the music.
Yeah.
You know, and if you want to be a session guy and you want to be like a Tim Pierce, like, then you know, like, you got to know your tones.
Yeah.
You got to study that stuff. If you can't afford the amps, get the modeling stuff. You know, slowly build up your collection once you start getting it, if you can. You know, like, if you want to be a session guy, it's like you have to know the job, right? So it's like, session guy, you want to be that? Okay, what do you need? Okay, well, you can't just have one Strat.
Yeah.
That's not going to get you all the tones you need.
Yeah.
So you might need to have a few guitars, and that might be more beneficial with having a few extra guitars and not as many amps and maybe like a modeling thing, so you can get, you know, the plethora of tones.
Yeah.
If you want to be like a touring guy, maybe it's best that like you have a really great rock solid pedal board that can go into any backline clean amp.
Yeah.
That you know will work for that. And like, you want to be good at like networking because you need to know who's looking for people, or you need to be in the community. If you want to be like a producer, then like know how to use your DAW, know how to get good tones. Like, you got to know more than just guitar playing. You need to know about making tracks and songwriting and production and drums. And like, if you want to, like, for me, I'm trying to like get the next level gear on the production end. So it's like, you know, I'm studying the different preamps and the compressors, like I already have some of that stuff, but like I'm thinking like, okay, like when I get to the next place, I'm going to like upgrade my speakers.
Yeah.
I'm going to upgrade this. But like, you know, and then studying like, what do you need to have like an in-home studio that's going to be amazing? It's like, besides speakers, I know that I got to have great acoustic treatment because I can't have a shitty sounding room.
Right.
So I have that now, and it's not fun, you know? So it's like, you just have to know your role and how to be best at that.
Yeah.
You know, like for SNL, it's like I was guitar guy. Right. So I just had to, I always use different guitars because I just wanted to keep it interesting and fun for me. And I had a pedal board that was only for what I would need on the show.
Right.
There's no Chase Bliss mood on that pedal board. I have one. It's awesome. No count to 5 on that pedal board.
Right.
But there's like, and the amount of times I would use a fuzz pedal, not that much. But
right.
Yeah, there's a tremolo, there's a reverb, there's a delay for solo. Like, you know, it's like knowing the place, right? And like knowing what you need and doing your best job that you can do.
100%. Jared, great talking
to you,
man.
And I love your videos.
Oh, dude, that really does mean a lot coming from you, man. I really appreciate it. So we'll talk.
I do have a request.
Okay.
This might be a very challenging thing to pull off.
Okay.
I would like love so much if you could do explaining and like demonstrating musically. So a lot of musical examples in this one.
Okay.
All the different main lines of the Fender amps. Princeton, Deluxe, like Tweed, then like Bandmaster, Tonemaster, Vibrolux. Like, what is the difference between all these models? Is it tubes? Is it just power? Is it volume? Is it just size of cabinet? And it doesn't need to be like the number, the year of the Bassman. That's perfect. I just want to know, like, what's the difference between all these models?
You know what? I actually really like that idea, and I'm gonna
and for Marshalls, and you know, like.
Yeah. So I'm going to use this clip. I'm going to clip this from the video, and I'm going to use it as the intro. I'm going to have to get Fender involved. I don't think I can pull this off my own. So Fender's going to have to sponsor this and organize all this. But yeah, we could do like, this actually might be fun to do together. We could like an entire, we play all the Tweeds, and then in different videos, we play all the Blackface stuff. And then in different videos, we play all the Marshalls. We just play it all. We just do it all.
Yeah. Yeah,
okay.
like same type of guitar and pickup, like for everything.
Yeah.
Like no difference. It's like if you're using a Les Paul with humbuckers, I'm using a Les Paul with humbuckers, and go through the whole thing. It's like, or maybe you do like, you know, Strat and a Les Paul for each one, whatever. Like,
dude,
I just want to know.
I'll fly out to LA once traveling gets a little bit. We're in the home stretch. Once traveling gets a little bit more feasible,
yeah,
I'll come out to LA. We'll talk to Fender. And we'll get them to set it up out there in LA, and we'll come over, and you and we'll play everything.
How do we is it possible? We got to also think like who's got the vintage gear that we could also borrow to go back.
Between the two of us, I'm sure we could patch that together. Because you're right, it's got to be the real thing, right? We can't just do like the off the shelf reissue stuff. We've got to get our hands on the real stuff, and that probably means we need to go to a studio.
John Shanks.
Yeah.
Tim Pierce, John Shanks.
They'll all be in the video. It'll be one big jolly get together.
Brian Ray, we'll call up all the homies. I mean, it would, and even if it's like reissues, that's fine too. But it's like it's more just the general like, what is the difference between all these? Why, like, what makes them different? Like AC, the Vox stuff is not that crazy. It's like AC30, 15, 50.
Yeah.
No. But like, yeah, like the Marshalls, like that would be cool too, man. Just like basically everything up till the 900 after that.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, Plexi, Blues Breaker, JMP Super Lead, like Mark II. I don't know, what's a Mark II versus it's like
we can make this happen. I like this.
That would be sick.
Yeah, man. All right, dude.
Anyway. I think you should do it on all things. Divided by, just like do a whole, just like ruin your life. Just like, yeah, sorry, I got to leave Atlanta for a month to do all.
Just to do all these I got to do every tube screamer ever. So.
But that's not JHS already did that. They're great on the pedal front. We gotta like Anyway, sorry. That's what I would love from you, even if I'm not involved.
Done. So I hope you enjoyed the discussion with Jared. Like I said, he and I have lots to cover. We've got lots to talk about in the future, and we will be doing that either online or off. I don't care, but what a great guy. So I'll have links to Jared's socials and everything down below. Check out his records on Spotify, Pearl Lion. Follow him on Instagram and everything like that. So yeah, huge thanks to Jared for coming on the show. So, as usual, if you want to support this YouTube channel and this podcast, follow the links down below to my website. Everything is on my website now, including this podcast. You can find my video courses there, my Helix presets, Quad Cortex presets, Kemper stuff, all the products, the merch, everything is on my website, rhettshull.com, so check that out. Subscribe on YouTube here if you're watching on YouTube or where you're listening to this podcast. And if you're on iTunes, leave us a good rating and review. It helps new people find the show, and share the show. I really love seeing you guys share the show on Instagram and things like that. So please continue to do that. I really appreciate the support. So thank you guys so much for listening and watching, and I will see y'all next week on Backstage Journal Season 3, Episode 4.